Good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, or good evening, or good night. This is Jen at Jen's Arty Inclinations, a place to create, share and play.
Hello everyone. Here we are with my Filling a Junk Journal series again, where I'm just working through a junk journal and kind of sharing my process. And this is another one that I'm working on. And I just wanted to show you, I love doing tip-in pages. So that's what we're going to do today. It's a really simple, easy thing. I quite often like doing them as tracing paper over a page. You know, gives you that feel of like a photo album. But you can tip in pages at any point. So here I'm just making myself a template because I thought I'd do it the same on one of my little half book pages in this journal that I'm working through with you at the moment. So I'm just, marking the size on a scrap piece of paper that I've got here, just putting dots, and you'll see in a moment I just tear around the edges, and that just helps me check the size, because what I want to do is an image for the full page, just like the example that you saw, with a sheet over the top of it that is slightly see-through. So here we go. I'm getting confused. Just lining myself up against those little dots that I made around the edge and tearing it down so that then I can check that back on my piece. And if I'm happy with the size, then I can cut my image down to the size. Now, this is such a super quick one, but it's a great way to add impact. The other thing that you can tip in are things like if you do a die cut, sometimes that's really great if you tip it in over a page. Texture pages. So it doesn't always have to be a flip out and so forth to add a bit of interest into your book. So look, once I measured it up, I thought I'll just do it just shy of the edge so it just sits ever so slightly inside that little half book page. And that's one of the things I love doing in my junk journals. I love when I'm putting them together. Sometimes I'll do them all uniform pages. So it might be all watercolour pages because it's something that I might want to draw in as well. Other times I might do all coffee dyed pages or just, plain pages or all lined. But I love doing these style of junk journal pages where I get to put into it all the lovely, interesting pages and textures and documents and all sorts of different things, pianola paper, lots of things. All right, so here is the image that I'm going to cut out. And I'm sort of just working out what I want, and I decided that first one felt like it was the bit that was in the foreground. It wasn't as soft focus as the rest of the page. So that's what I'm using. And look, the great thing is I did make a big glue mistake at the end here, and that's something else with junk journals. They're wonderful with mistakes because mistakes are usually fantastic opportunities to create something. They make you have to get creative to think about how to get around that mistake. You always learn something when you're working in junk journals, I think. So anyway, cut that piece down to size, quite happy with that. I did consider whether I wanted it on the other side of, that half page, but I thought that was all too blendy, even with a piece over the top. I just really liked it on this. It felt like, almost like that's on a little frame anyway with the matte background. Okay, now this paper, I don't know what kind of paper it is. Might be mulberry or something, but it's not tracing paper. But as you can see, it's see-through. So this is what I decided to cut down to put over the top. And again, I'm adding a little bit of embellishment on top at the end. But because it's sort of, I'm trying to think of what I can compare it to. But look, it's almost like a fabric, so it doesn't tear straight quite as easily as a piece of paper does. So the fibres are different directions and so forth. So as you can see, just putting that over the top just makes it, it just adds something to the page. I'm roughing up the edge there with a pair of scissors There are lots of ways you can do that. The edge of a metal ruler is probably safer than a pair of scissors. Do as I say, not as I do. Anyway, I inked around the edge just to add a bit more of a frame to the picture, and I glued over the whole page. So it's what you call laminating the image to the page. It's where you get a really nice stick. And what you should always do when you finish your work is put it under weight overnight. And if you need to, you can pop some baking sheets in between your pieces so that if there's any little glue seepage, it'll catch that rather than gluing it to your other page. When you're tipping in, you can just do a strip of glue on the edge, but for this one, I decided I'd just do double-sided tape. So that's all I'm doing, and that just gives me a really nice straight line. I do find that it always works better when you get a nice straight line on your tip-in pages. And there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can fold the page to the tip-in. Because this is a bit softer, I actually put the tip-in on top of the page. That was a little bit easier to hold, but you'll get to work out, how it manipulates for yourself when you give it a go. So there you are. That's my little page. All I'm doing here is, because I glued that down using my glue stick, I'm just stretching the paper so that it flattens out again with my bone folder there. All right. So to finish the little tip inside, I decided I'd glue a piece of lace on the edge. It just seemed to be calling out for lace. I love lace edges, and this is my mistake. I glued on top of this piece, but it's actually quite porous. So here I am. I'm just oblivious to it at this point, and I'm putting my lace on because that's all I'm focusing on. But that glue seeped through onto my picture below. Now, I did find a fix, and actually I kind of like the look of the little fix. I see I've stuck it down, which I have not meant to. And then I tried to fix it before my glue dried. So I used my finger a little bit to try and get the glue off. I quickly put a sheet of paper onto that so that I didn't accidentally muck that up again. And the glue's not dried yet, so I used my glue rubber and I rubbed too hard and started to get holes in the image. So then I just got some of my paper trims. I often torn off pieces of paper, I run them through the sewing machine so that, I can just grab a quick and easy one to do a page edge. And so it's like a trim or a cluster trim for the side of your page. So I decided that'd be perfect on the edge of that picture. The blue in there kind of went with the map behind and the image on the front, and actually it added interest. So learning from my mistake, I put a piece of paper underneath before I burnished it down, and then I just trimmed the edges down. And I got to say, I love how that turned out. So if I hadn't have made that mistake, I wouldn't have thought of it. So don't fret when you're in junk journals. I mean, most of you know this, but yeah, don't fret. The imperfection of them, you'll find more creativity, and oftentimes you'll learn something too. It makes you have to do a technique slightly differently, doing something second instead of first, and then you might end up with a different effect. So yeah, it's fun to explore, and you never have to let it go usually with junk journals. It's very rare that I have to scrap something completely. But if I do, it's only paper. So, all good. As you can see, I just tore down a piece of paper here that I think it was eco dyeing, not coffee dyeing on that particular one, even though it's the same kind of tones. So I glued that down onto the book page. I love book page, in our journals. And then I had these little click together letters. So I decided I'd make it say notes. And rather than a heading, I thought it was nice, off on the bottom right. I love the look, in old photo albums, how oftentimes images had photo corners, but sometimes they were just taped down. So that's what I decided to use, just masking tape. And I couldn't find my thin one, so I just cut a thicker piece of masking tape in half with my scissors. You know, put a little bit more stamping, just some dots and, what do you call it? You know that thing that you, dauber. That's it. I used a dauber to ink around the edges just to give it a bit of a finish. So I just showed you the example again there from before. And here we are. Here's the finished one. It is so quick. It's so easy. Little bit of a dragonfly stamp on the top there. And that just finishes that little spread off. So I can finish underneath it later if I feel the need. There you go. There's a little example again, which was a little bit more simplified and, you know, jazzed up a little bit in the journal that we're working on at the moment. Take care, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. I'd love it if you could leave me a comment below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed what you saw today. And of course, please subscribe if you haven't already. I will see you next time. And in the meantime, keep creating. Enjoy.